It all started during the last week of spring training. Our baseball team had been practicing hard for the upcoming season, and I'd been part of this group for almost 2 years now. I should probably mention early on that I'm gay, but not everyone on the team knew that fact. I wasn't exactly hiding it, but I also wasn't broadcasting it either. You know how it can be in sports. Sometimes it's just easier to keep certain parts of your life separate from the locker room talk. Among all my teammates, Ryan was someone I always had a bit of a thing for, though I knew better than to ever act on it. He was the classic all-American type, tall, broad shoulders, with this kind of effortless charm that made everyone gravitate toward him. We'd become pretty good friends over the seasons, the kind who'd grab food after practice or spot each other during workouts, but nothing that ever crossed any lines. He was straight, very straight from what I could tell from his stories about weekend conquests, and I had accepted that our relationship would never be anything beyond friendship. The whole situation started when Ryan mentioned his apartment was being fumigated over the weekend. He'd been complaining about it during practice, saying how the exterminator had given him almost no notice and now he needed to clear out for at least 2 nights. I didn't think much of it at the time, figured he'd crash with one of his many admirers or maybe another teammate with a bigger place. I remember we were all packing up after practice when Ryan approached me in the parking lot. "Hey, can I ask you something?" he said, leaning against my car. There was something in his voice that made me pay attention, a slight nervousness that wasn't typical for him. "My place is getting fumigated this weekend, and I was wondering if I could crash at yours for a night or two. I know it's last minute, but I'm kind of desperate here." Let me tell you, my mind immediately went into overdrive. Ryan, in my apartment? Overnight? I tried to keep my expression neutral while my thoughts raced. "Yeah, sure," I heard myself saying before I'd fully processed what this might mean. "I've got a couch that pulls out. It's not the most comfortable, but it'll do for a couple nights." Ryan's face lit up with that smile that always made my stomach do a little flip. "You're a lifesaver, man. I owe you big time." We made plans for him to come over the following evening, and I spent the next 24 hours in a state of mild panic, cleaning my apartment like my life depended on it and trying to make sure there was nothing too obviously gay lying around. Not that I was ashamed, but I didn't want to make things awkward. When Friday evening rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I'd changed my outfit 3 times, which was ridiculous considering we were just hanging out at my place. I settled on jeans and a casual t-shirt, not wanting to look like I was trying too hard. The doorbell rang at around 7, and there was Ryan with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a 6-pack of beer in hand. "Thought I should bring something to say thanks," he said, handing me the beer as he stepped inside. I gave him the quick tour of my modest 1-bedroom apartment, showing him the living room with the pull-out couch where he'd be sleeping. We ordered pizza, cracked open the beers, and settled in to watch the baseball game that was on that night. It felt surprisingly normal, just 2 teammates hanging out, and I started to relax a bit. As the evening wore on and we finished the 6-pack, our conversation drifted from baseball to more personal topics. Ryan started talking about his family back in Ohio, how his dad had pushed him into baseball from a young age. "Sometimes I wonder if I even like playing anymore, or if I'm just doing it because it's what I've always done," he confessed, surprising me with his candor. I'd never heard him talk like this before. I shared some of my own struggles too, not about my sexuality specifically, but about feeling like an outsider sometimes, about the pressure to conform. There was something about the quiet of my apartment, away from the rest of the team, that made it easier to talk about these things. Ryan was a good listener, more thoughtful than I'd given him credit for. It was getting late, past midnight, when we decided to call it a night. I started pulling out the sofa bed, grabbing some sheets and a pillow from the closet. "Sorry it's not more comfortable," I said, trying to fluff up the thin mattress. Ryan came over to help, and our hands brushed as we spread the sheet over the mattress. I felt that familiar jolt, the one I always tried to ignore around him. That's when Ryan dropped the bombshell. "Actually," he said, looking a bit sheepish, "would it be weird if I just crashed in your bed instead? This pullout looks pretty rough, and I've got that shoulder thing acting up again." He rubbed his right shoulder, which had been giving him trouble during practice. "We could just share if that's cool with you." "I don't mind." I froze. "Share my bed? With Ryan?" My brain short-circuited for a moment. Yeah, I guess that would be fine," I managed to say, trying to sound casual about it. "The bed's pretty big." It wasn't, actually, just a queen size, but what was I going to say? I couldn't exactly tell him why sharing a bed might be complicated for me. Cool. Thanks, man, Ryan said, seemingly oblivious to my internal crisis. I promise I don't snore. At least, that's what I've been told. He grinned, and I forced a smile in return, my mind racing with all the ways this could go terribly wrong. I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and giving myself a stern talking to in the mirror. This was nothing, I told myself. Just two friends sharing a bed out of convenience. People did it all the time. I needed to get my feelings in check and not make this weird. When I came out, Ryan had already changed into a t-shirt and basketball shorts and was sitting on the edge of my bed, scrolling through his phone. It struck me how comfortable he looked there, how right somehow, and I had to push that thought away immediately. Which side do you prefer? He asked, looking up from his phone. I usually sleep on the left, I said, grabbing my own sleep clothes and heading back to the bathroom to change. When I returned, Ryan was already under the covers on the right side of the bed, still on his phone. I hesitated for just a moment before sliding in beside him, keeping as close to my edge as possible without actually falling off. Thanks again for letting me stay, Ryan said, putting his phone on the nightstand and turning to face me. You're a good friend. No problem, I replied, staring determinedly at the ceiling. That's what teammates are for, right? Ryan chuckled. Yeah, but not everyone would let me invade their bed like this. There was something in his voice I couldn't quite identify, but before I could analyze it further, he reached over and turned off the lamp. Night, man. Night, I echoed, lying rigid in the darkness, acutely aware of every inch of space between us. I could hear Ryan's breathing, smell his cologne mixed with the scent of the beer we'd been drinking. It was going to be a long night. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the soft light of dawn filtering through my curtains, and to the realization that something was very different. During the night, we had shifted. Ryan was now pressed against my back, his arm draped over my waist in what could only be described as spooning. I froze, not daring to move, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would wake him. This had to be accidental, right? Just the unconscious movement of sleep. But then I felt Ryan stir behind me, and instead of jerking away in surprise, his arm tightened slightly around me. Was he awake? I couldn't tell, and I was too afraid to turn and look. Morning, came his voice, husky with sleep, confirming that yes, he was very much awake and very much aware of our position. Morning, I managed to reply, still not moving. Sorry about this. I gestured vaguely at our entangled position, but Ryan didn't move away. I'm not, he said quietly, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Slowly, I turned to face him, our faces now just inches apart. What do you mean? I asked, searching his eyes for some explanation. Ryan looked nervous, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. I've been wanting to talk to you about something, he said, his voice low. I wasn't sure how, and then this whole fumigation thing happened, and I thought maybe. Wait, I interrupted, a suspicion forming. Is your apartment actually being fumigated? Ryan had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Yes, but not until next week. I may have adjusted the timeline a bit. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. So you made up an excuse to stay over? What? He took a deep breath. Because I've been feeling something for you, and I didn't know how else to explore it. I've never, with a guy before. But there's something about you that makes me wonder. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan, straight Ryan with his endless stories about women, was saying he had feelings for me? It didn't make sense. But you're straight, I said, stating the obvious. Ryan shrugged, looking uncertain. I thought so too. Maybe I'm not as straight as I thought. Or maybe it's just you. I don't know. I just know that I think about you in ways I've never thought about another guy, and it's been driving me crazy trying to figure it out. My mind was reeling. This was the stuff of daydreams, the kind of scenario I'd imagined but never believed could actually happen. So you decided to crash at my place and climb into my bed to what? Experiment. He winced at my tone. When you put it like that, it sounds manipulative. I'm sorry. I should have been upfront with you. I was scared. I still am. The vulnerability in his voice was genuine, and I felt my irritation softening. This is a lot to process, I said honestly. I mean, I've had feelings for you for a while, but I never thought you'd reciprocate. I don't want to be an experiment, Ryan. That's not what this is, he insisted, reaching out to touch my face hesitantly. I mean, yes, I'm figuring things out, but my feelings for you are real. I've been fighting them for months." I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception, but all I saw was sincerity and a touch of fear. The same fear I'd felt when I first acknowledged my own sexuality. "So what now?" I asked, still not entirely convinced this wasn't some elaborate dream I was about to wake up from. "Now, maybe we could see where this goes. Take it slow," Ryan suggested, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. "I know it's not fair to ask when I'm still figuring things out, but I'd really like to try." I considered his words carefully. There was risk here, the risk of heartbreak if Ryan decided this wasn't for him after all, the risk of team dynamics changing if things went south. But there was also the possibility of something I'd wanted for so long actually becoming reality. "Slow," I agreed finally. "We take this very slow. And you have to be honest with me every step of the way about what you're feeling." Relief washed over Ryan's face, followed by a smile that made my heart skip. "I can do that," he said. And then, hesitantly, "Can I kiss you? I've been wondering what it would be like." Instead of answering, I leaned forward and pressed my lips to his. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when Ryan responded, pulling me closer and deepening the kiss, it felt like an answer to a question I'd been asking for a very long time. We spent most of that Saturday in bed, not always kissing or touching, but talking, really talking. Ryan told me about the first time he'd felt attracted to me, during a team practice when I'd laughed at something, and he'd been struck by how much he wanted to be the one to make me laugh like that again. I shared my own journey of coming to terms with my sexuality, the struggles, and the triumphs. It wasn't all serious, though. We ordered in lunch and watched stupid videos on our phones, laughing and occasionally stealing kisses like teenagers. It felt surreal, but also strangely natural, as if we'd just shifted our friendship into something new rather than creating something entirely different. By the time evening rolled around, we were both hungry again and decided to venture out for dinner. There was a moment of tension as we prepared to leave the bubble of my apartment. Would things be different in public? But Ryan surprised me by taking my hand as we walked to the restaurant, a small Italian place a few blocks away. "Are you sure?" I asked, glancing around nervously. We weren't far from campus, and there was always the chance of running into teammates or other people we knew. "I'm not saying I'm ready to make an announcement at team practice," Ryan said, squeezing my hand. "But I'm not ashamed of this, of us. I'm still figuring things out, but I know that much." Dinner was nice, a little awkward at times as we navigated this new dynamic, but mostly comfortable. We talked about everything and nothing, and I found myself falling even harder for this version of Ryan, the one who was brave enough to explore something that scared him. When we got back to my apartment, there was a new kind of tension between us. We'd spent the day being physically close, but there was an unspoken question about how far this would go. Ryan sensed my hesitation and pulled me into a hug. "Just so we're clear," he said, his voice rumbling against my ear. I meant it when I said slow. "I'm not expecting anything to happen tonight, or any night until we're both ready. This is all new territory for me, and I want to do it right." The relief I felt was immense. Not because I didn't want him, I did, desperately, but because his words confirmed that this wasn't just about physical curiosity for him. He was invested in whatever this was becoming between us. That night, we slept in my bed again, this time with no pretense. Ryan held me close, and I fell asleep listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, still half convinced I would wake up to find it had all been a dream. But morning came, and Ryan was still there, watching me with a soft expression that made my chest tight. "No regrets?" I asked quietly, needing to hear it. "None," he said firmly, leaning in to kiss me. "Except maybe that I waited so long to be honest with myself and with you." The rest of the weekend passed in a similar fashion, talking, laughing, getting to know each other in this new context. By Sunday evening, when Ryan was supposed to leave, since his apartment wasn't actually being fumigated, neither of us wanted the bubble to burst. "I could stay another night," Ryan suggested, a hopeful note in his voice. "We don't have early practice tomorrow." I was tempted, so tempted, but I also knew we needed to face reality at some point. "I think we should stick to the original plan," I said reluctantly. "Not because I want you to go, but because we both need some time to process all of this." "And you said slow, remember?" Ryan nodded, understanding but clearly disappointed. "You're right. Slow." He gathered his things, and I walked him to the door, already missing him even though he hadn't left yet. At the door, he pulled me into a kiss that was anything but slow, leaving me breathless and reconsidering my stance on him staying. To be continued, he said with a grin that promised all sorts of things, and then he was gone. I leaned against the closed door, my mind replaying the events of the weekend. Had this really happened? Had my straight teammate really spent the weekend in my bed, confessing feelings for me? It seemed impossible, and yet the lingering scent of his cologne on my sheets and the memory of his lips on mine were very real. The next day at practice was strange. We'd agreed to keep things quiet for now, at least until Ryan had more time to process his feelings, but it was hard not to stare at him, hard not to remember how he'd looked in my bed, how his laugh had sounded in the private space of my apartment. Ryan caught my eye across the field and gave me a small, private smile that sent warmth spreading through me. Whatever this was between us, wherever it was going, it was real. And for now, that was enough. In the weeks that followed, we developed a new routine. Ryan would come over a few nights a week, sometimes just to hang out, sometimes staying the night. We were careful at practice and around our teammates, but in the privacy of my apartment, we were free to explore this new relationship. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Ryan had moments of doubt, of confusion about what this meant for his identity. We talked through it, sometimes arguing, sometimes just holding each other in silence. But each time, he came back to the same conclusion, that his feelings for me were real, regardless of what label he put on them. 3 months after that first weekend, Ryan suggested we tell the team. I was surprised. I'd assumed he'd want to keep things private for much longer. "Are you sure?" I asked, not wanting him to feel pressured. "I'm sure about you," he said simply. "The rest is just details." We decided to start small, telling just a few close friends on the team. Their reactions ranged from surprise to knowing nods. Apparently, we weren't as subtle as we thought, but the support was unanimous. Gradually, more people knew, and while there were a few uncomfortable moments and awkward questions, overall the response was positive. Looking back now, I still marvel at how one night changed everything. How my straight teammate asking to crash at my place, choosing my bed over the couch without asking, led to the most significant relationship of my life. It wasn't always easy, navigating the complexities of Ryan's evolving understanding of his sexuality alongside the normal challenges of any relationship. But it was always worth it. Ryan still teases me about that first night, claiming he had no ulterior motives in asking to share my bed. I don't believe him for a second, but I'm grateful every day for whatever courage or impulse led him to make that request. Sometimes the most unexpected turns in life lead us exactly where we need to be. And as for the couch that started it all, we still have it, now in our shared apartment. It's still uncomfortable as hell, but neither of us would dream of getting rid of it. After all, if it had been more comfortable, who knows if Ryan would have ever asked to share my bed, and our story might never have begun. Total_char_count, 18,457.